A young hunter traumatized by North Carolina Sasquatch. The sickening smell of the Bigfoot almost made him throw up. John P. writes RMSO. I'm not sure where to start with this. I grew up in western North Carolina in Cherokee County in the small mountain town of Andrews. From a young age, my father had me in the woods hunting, fishing, trapping, and just enjoying the outdoors. I was never afraid to be in the woods, even by myself, at any time. My father was an outdoorsman who loved being in the woods and passed that love on to me. We spent many seasons in the western North Carolina mountains, so I knew my way around and knew every kind of animal track that there was. It was what I am guessing was my first encounter with what I now call Bigfoot. It happened around 1976 when I was 9 years old. We went fishing in the west end of Cherokee County at Hiwassee Lake. My dad and I were fishing early one Saturday morning down Joe Brown Highway, just past Shook's Marina Turnoff. It was a small dirt pull-off next to the pavement. The area was undeveloped, very few houses, and those that were there were really far apart. We unloaded my dad's pickup and took our gear down off the bank to the lake shore. It was cool, and I remember splitting up from my dad and going around the lake shore while he stayed put. We were about 50 yards apart from each other. After about an hour of no bites, I picked up and moved back to where my dad was sitting. I sat down next to him and started to eat one of the sandwiches we had brought. My dad sat up and said, "Do you smell that?" It smelled like the worst smelling dead skunk ever, worse than one that had been run over on the road. The smell kept getting worse when a large rock came from the direction where Dad parked the truck from up on the bank. It hit the water, causing a massive splash. It was like a full-grown man had done a cannonball dive off the high dive, that kind of a splash. My dad jumped up and ran up the bank, and I followed him as quickly as I could. When I reached him, he was looking around, and neither he nor I could find anyone around. There was no way such a large rock could have just rolled down the embankment and caused such a splash. We crossed the road where there was nothing but woods and looked around thinking someone was just messing with us. The smell lingered the whole time we were there. We spent the best part of an hour looking for an answer, but to no avail. I have to admit I was a little bit unnerved. We spoke of the incident over the years, but never knew what threw the rock off the embankment. In 1983, when I was 15 years old and a sophomore in high school, we had my second encounter. Dad and I had been planning on going deer hunting in the fall that year. We had been scouting some different areas and had settled on a location in Graham County, North Carolina, close to the Tennessee border. We had been fishing on the Cheoah River next to the Topico Dam, and we kept seeing a lot of deer sign just before deer season. There was a small dirt road just as you crossed the bridge of the Cheoah River that was a good parking spot that was a way off the road. My dad had to work the first week of the deer season, so he set a day on the second Saturday. We arrived super early, around 2 a.m., parking off the road as we did before when we went fishing in the area. We grabbed our packs and guns and started hiking towards the top of the ridge to set up our blind. It was a simple wooden tree branch blind with old weeping willow fronds and corn husks we had saved. We got a mile in from the truck and set up in the pitch black dark. I remember using the old aluminum Rayovac flashlights Dad had. They put out just a tiny bit of light, as the woods were pitch as dark tar. We set up the blind and hunkered down. We were just up on a small mound near an open grassy area. We were waiting till the first light of day. Time passed as daylight crept in, but no deer were to be seen. It was just before 7 a.m. when my dad told me to stay put as he was going around the hill down towards the truck to see if he could flush out a big buck that may still be bedding down in some thicket. My dad left his .402 bolt-action rifle and took my .222 Remington with him. He was gone about an hour with nothing to show for our time sitting there. As I leaned back against a tree, I began to smell something that made me sick and almost throw up. It was such a sickening smell. I wasn't sure I could stand it much longer. We had been hearing squirrels barking and birds up in the trees, but at that moment, everything was dead quiet. To my right, something caught my attention coming out of the woods. Thinking it was my dad, I turned my head, but what I saw was nothing I'd ever seen before, nor had I ever seen anything like it again. This thing was massive, solid black, standing on two legs. It had to be around 7 feet tall or taller. It was leaning forward, and I remember seeing its arms hanging down to its knees. I was frozen in fear. It was taking massive steps, maybe 3 of my steps to one of its. All I could do is watch it cross the grassy area in front of me. I don't remember if it looked my way or even noticed me. I'm guessing it was about 30 yards from where I was sitting. I remember the fear that came over me and how I could not move. I remember tears streaming down my face as it walked away into the woods and disappeared out of my sight. I am ashamed to tell you, I sat there sobbing like a baby. I don't know how much time passed until my dad came back and found me in one more mess of a state. Dad told me later on he had to lead me out of the woods back to the truck. He told me I never said a word all the way back home. From that day until now, I will not go back into the woods by myself or even with anyone. I know what I saw. I know what it is not. It was not a bear, wild boar, panther, or any other large animal in the mountains here in western North Carolina. It took me a long time before I could even talk to my father about this thing that I saw. I never told anyone else, as I knew I would be labeled as a crazy hillbilly. I still remember what happened, the smell, and those few moments as it passed by. But I still cannot set foot in the woods. I gave up hunting and fishing. I sold all my equipment that year. Massive Bigfoot growls at hunter, then stands up and walks into Allegheny Forest. Bob R. writes RMSO. I'm an avid hunter, been in the woods almost my whole life. This one time hunting in Warren, Pennsylvania, in the Allegheny National Forest at a friend's hunting camp, we were about 3 miles in on a logging road, where I then walked in another mile or so and found a nice area to sit and wait for the sun to rise. It was deer season. Just as the sun was rising, I heard a grunt. I thought it was a deer, so I'm on high alert. But then it was dead silent. About 15 minutes later, the sun was peeking through as well. I then heard a grunt and growl. I looked in the direction I heard the growl, and I see this thing that stands up and turns away from me, then walks away. It was only 75 yards away. It was massive, about 3.5 feet wide and about 8 to 9 feet tall. It was in heavy brush and walked through it like it was nothing. This is the first time talking about it online. I've told some of my friends and found out some of them had experienced something as well. And now we have our own group called the Lake Erie BFRO. RMSO asks, so many deer and elk hunters report nearly the same situation where they sneak into a good spot or get up into a deer stand before light, then have a sighting and encounter in the early morning hours. What color was the creature? Did you see any of its tracks or anything else? Bob continues. It was black, and I got the hell out of there. I was scared at the time, but now my curiosity got the better of me, and I'm looking for them now. I want to be their friend. And we are a part of the Pennsylvania Bigfoot Project.